It didn't take Brittany long to show why she wasn't included in Luke and Kristen's private Maui proposal plans. Before the newly engaged couple could even share their happy news with their families, Brittany shared it with Jax on Season 2, Episode 13, causing immediate concern that the news would spread further. Both Brittany and Jax acknowledged her mistake. "Big mistake," he declared, and she separately stated she was so mad at herself and couldn't believe she made the slip-up. Indeed, Jax immediately told a group chat with 30 random dudes. As Brittany put it, something he fully admitted to. "Everybody knows I talk a lot," Jax admitted. "You tell me something, you know it's going to be told." Despite accusing Kristen of overreacting, he conceded, "I understand. I get it. I made a mistake, and I apologize. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to do that." Kristen and Luke react. When Kristen woke up in Maui to a congratulatory text from Jax, she immediately sought to find out who told him about their sunset engagement. She had already instructed her friends to keep the news quiet since their families were in a different time zone. As she revealed, Jax told her he'd read about it online, and the news was everywhere already. However, Brittany quickly admitted to sharing the proposal news, but had asked him not to tell anyone else. He lied, like he does, Luke added. He said, "I didn't want to throw Brittany under the bus. It's like, you just sent her into a spiral." With the group chat aware, people that I didn't even know were, like, saying things like, "Well, that's not going to last," Kristen shared, while Luke added that there were probably a dozen messages saying things such as, "It won't last 6 months," and "Pray for Luke." Kristen, however, insisted that she was not mad at Brittany, echoing what she'd already told her friend when she confronted her. "It wasn't purposeful, it wasn't malicious," Kristen explained. "It was just, like, very thoughtless, so it was annoying, but I wasn't, like, upset with her." Luke similarly concluded, "When I did talk to Brittany, I believe, genuinely, it was a slip-up, just not thinking about it, which, justified me not cluing her into the engagement." Brittany's reaction. Brittany, for her part, apologized deeply for her awful lapse in judgment, noting that she can't trust Jax for nothing and was about to cry herself afterward. "I really did not mean to do that," she added. "I don't know what I was thinking." During episode 13, she explained to Kristen that the only reason she was on the phone with Jax was to discuss something involving her 4-year-old son Croz's school. "I don't know if it's like a habit, like he was my person for so long," she added, "but like I know not to tell him things." That's why she called Jax and went off on him hours earlier, she told Kristen. Further discussing the conversation with Zach Wickham, who was actually upset with her after Jesse filled him in on Jax's text. Brittany elaborated, "I immediately regretted it, obviously. I yelled at him, and he knows if he goes on, like social media, or does something foolish, he is done." Jax appeared to at least mostly understand her message, though. After sharing Kristen and Luke's news with new next-door neighbor Tom Schwartz later on, he asked him to keep it to himself so as not to cause more trouble with the group. As Jax confessed to a producer, "That's one thing that I'll never be able to fix. I cannot keep a secret." The Hawaiian sun dipped below the horizon, painting the Maui sky in hues of fiery orange and soft lavender. On a secluded stretch of beach, Luke knelt, the rhythmic hush of the waves providing a natural soundtrack to the most important question he would ever ask. Kristen, her eyes wide with a mixture of shock and joy, nodded, a tear tracing a path down her cheek as the diamond on her finger caught the last rays of sunlight. This was their moment, sacred and pure, a secret jewel they intended to hold close for just a little while longer, to savor before sharing with the world. Their plan was simple: enjoy the honeymoon phase in paradise, then call their families, letting them in on their joyous news before anyone else. They had already carefully instructed their closest friends, including Brittany, to keep mum. The time difference meant their families were still asleep, blissfully unaware of the new chapter unfolding for Luke and Kristen. The next morning, the serene peace of their Maui getaway was shattered by the buzzing of Kristen's phone. A text from Jax. "Congrats, heard the news is everywhere." Kristen's heart plummeted. Everywhere. How could it be everywhere? She hadn't even had a chance to call her mom. A cold dread settled in her stomach as she nudged Luke awake. "Jax just texted me," she whispered, her voice laced with disbelief. "He says the news is everywhere." Luke, groggy but quickly alert, frowned. "Everywhere, we just got engaged yesterday." A flurry of frantic calls ensued. Kristen, her voice tight with a mixture of confusion and frustration, immediately confronted Jax. His response was a nonchalant, "Oh, I read it online. It's all over the internet." But Kristen knew that was a lie. Her gut twisted. There was only one person who knew, who she had explicitly told to keep it a secret. Brittany. Just as Kristen suspected, Brittany, when finally reached, burst into a torrent of apologies, her voice thick with regret. "I am so mad at myself, Kristen. I don't know what I was thinking. It just slipped out. To Jax. I asked him not to tell anyone, I swear." Luke, listening in on the speakerphone, let out a frustrated sigh. "He lied, like he does," Luke muttered, shaking his head. "He said, I didn't want to throw Brittany under the bus. He literally just sent her into a spiral." And a spiral it was. Within minutes, Kristen's phone was vibrating relentlessly with messages from people she barely knew. People that I didn't even know were, like, saying things like, "Well, that's not going to last." Kristen recounted later, the sting of those words still fresh. Luke chimed in, equally exasperated. There were probably a dozen messages saying things like, "It won't last 6 months," and "Pray for Luke." The joy of their engagement was being overshadowed by the intrusive chatter of strangers. Their private happiness turned into public fodder. Yet, amidst the chaos, Kristen felt a surprising lack of anger towards Brittany. "I'm not mad at Brittany," Kristen insisted to Luke, echoing what she'd already told her friend. "It wasn't purposeful, it wasn't malicious. It was just, like, very thoughtless. So it was annoying, but I wasn't, like, upset with her." Luke, too, eventually came to the same conclusion. "When I did talk to Brittany, I believe, genuinely, it was a slip-up, just not thinking about it, which, justified me not cluing her into the engagement." The sting of the breach of trust was there, but it was tempered by the understanding that Brittany's heart was in the right place, even if her brain had taken a momentary vacation. Meanwhile, across the Pacific, Brittany was in a self-inflicted torment. She clutched her phone, tears blurring her vision. "I really did not mean to do that," she whispered to herself, pacing her living room. "I don't know what I was thinking." The weight of her mistake pressed down on her, an awful lapse in judgment. She couldn't trust Jax for nothing. The moment the words had tumbled out, she had immediately regretted them. Her conversation with Jax had been about Cruz's school, a mundane discussion about a parent-teacher conference. But old habits die hard. Jax had been her confidant, her person for so long, a toxic comfort she still occasionally leaned on, despite knowing better. "I don't know if it's like a habit, like he was my person for so long," she confessed to Kristen later, her voice laced with self-reproach. "But, like, I know not to tell him things." That was why, hours earlier, after the words had escaped her lips, she had went off on him. The thought of her slip-up spreading like wildfire had ignited a familiar fury within her. She had screamed, threatened, and made it abundantly clear that if he dared to broadcast this news on social media, he was done. Done with her friendship, done with any remnants of their past connection. The ripple effect of her mistake was already reaching others. Zach Wickham, a mutual friend, had called her genuinely upset after Jesse filled him in on Jax's group chat revelation. Brittany reiterated her remorse to Zach. "I immediately regretted it, obviously. I yelled at him, and he knows if he goes on, like, social media or does something foolish, he is done." Back in Los Angeles, Jax, surprisingly, seemed to have taken Brittany's message to heart, or at least mostly. After all, he did immediately tell a group chat with 30 random dudes. His internal monologue, if it could be called that, was a chaotic mix of deflection and self-awareness. "Everybody knows I talk a lot," he'd admitted with a shrug to Kristen and Luke. "You tell me something, you know it's going to be told."